Things are about to get interesting. We are moving on to compound shapes. I'm giving you a whole row of stubs to practice just because at the corner there's something interesting happening. Like before, plot in incoming pairs. That is an incoming pair on this shape. And at the top, there's an outgoing pair there, but also an outgoing pair there that creates the ring pair of the large snowflake. As you can see, the shape consists of a small snowflake and a large snowflake that are merging into one. And then right at the corner, the ring pair of the small snowflake becomes an incoming pair for the bottom motif. And then all the others are outgoing pairs. This you will encounter quite often when you start designing your own shapes on this Paris ground graph paper. And one more. That edge pair enters the shape, and that edge pair needs to exit the shape. Let's reason out how to work these. Because the top part of this shape is based on the small snowflake, let's try the first variation and have the two top pairs work together. And they essentially become the first weavers and can be used to make a contour pair on one side. It works through the incoming pairs, and on the other side. But because the shape is conjoined, you want there to be a slightly longer weaver moving across the first part of the shape, the edge, the contour of the shape, and that weaver weaves through all the incoming pairs, and then it gets abandoned as a passive thread. Continuing the small snowflake arrangement, have the inside pairs cross at the top, and we're running out of space. So we can throw out one, and as if you are finishing that as a small snowflake, cross the other inside pair too. And that pair automatically just becomes a bias weaver of sorts that you can throw out. And the top part of the shape is complete. Now you essentially have the same arrangement of a small snowflake, except that the first weaver has already been made from the compound, from the combination of the small snowflake at the top. So the weavers are on this pin can create a weaver passive combo, and the weaver weaves through all the passives and the incoming pairs. And gets abandoned. And it changes direction and becomes a passive by itself, and the contour pair on the other side, because it's the last one. It creates a new weaver, so ignore the contour pair, weaver passive, and the weaver weaves through all the other pairs and gets thrown out. Only enough space for 2 more weavers, so throwing out the contour pairs one after the other. First the one, because the third last weaver went to the right. The second last weaver can move to the left, can be made from the left. Ending off with the final contour pair, weaving through all the available passives, and they all get thrown out. Let's try again one more time. Indicate the incoming pairs. The outgoing pairs. Starting at the top, interpreting this squat diamond shape with 4-pinned as a small snowflake in this arrangement, in the first variation arrangement, a symmetrical start with some bias cloth work. The inside pairs, bringing in a new pair, across the inside pairs and the outside pairs, but bringing in a new pair there. And continuing that bias weave of the top snowflake and completing the top part of the shape. The very first pairs that you worked become contour pairs, and the contour pair works through all the incoming pairs and a new weaver passive combo gets created on that side. And the weaver weaves through all the incoming pairs and becomes a passive, gets abandoned as a passive. Just inside the contour pair, you create a new weaver and a passive. The weaver weaves through all the passive threads and the contour pair and gets thrown out. Only enough space for 2 more weavers, and you'd be able to gauge that visually in your own designs. The second last weaver is the first contour pair to get thrown out, and the last contour pair is the last weaver to get thrown out. When it is time to start practicing without the visual cue, incoming, and incoming, outgoing, outgoing, outgoing. Best start with pencil for this one. The topmost pairs work through each other, and draws in a pair on either side. They make a stitch on the inside of the shape, and on the other side gets thrown out. Now essentially that pair is the first contour pair. It works through all the incoming pairs on the other side of the shape. The top part of the shape needs to be completed, so we need a second pair of that bias weave. And the top part of the shape is complete. See, you'd be tempted to connect that pair to that edge, but this is an incoming pair. So you need to compensate for that by having them cross somehow. So they need to enter the shape in an alternate fashion. And then you can treat these two pairs as incoming pairs to the shape. Ignore the contour pair and create a new weaver and a passive combo from the pairs just inside the contour pair, and the weaver weaves through the shape, through all the passives, and gets thrown out. If the diagonal continued there, it would have crossed the next two available incoming pairs and then got abandoned as a passive itself. Starting to run out of space, so there's only room enough for two more weavers. The last weaver went to the right, so the second last weaver needs to move towards the left. And the very last weaver would be the contour pair on the other side. And then you can clean up the diagram. Continue practicing this motif on your worksheet. In the next section, we'll try a compound shape consisting of a similar arrangement of a large snowflake and a small snowflake conjoined, and then after that, two large snowflakes conjoined. The second arrangement of a compound shape that I'd like to show you consists of a large snowflake and a small snowflake again, but starting the other way around, as if the first motif is just flipped on its head. The same principles apply. You'd need to figure out the incoming pairs and the outgoing pairs first, and that edge pair becomes an incoming pair for the bottom part of the shape. That edge pair, ring pair, is an outgo. It gets created from an outgoing pair at the top part of the shape. Exiting, 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 exiting. And because you're starting with a large snowflake, the thread movements would be very familiar. Breaking the rule of creating a weaver passive combo around a pin, the very first weaver gets created from the pair above the pin on either side. The weaver weaves through all the incoming pairs, gets abandoned as a passive thread. You create a new weaver passive combo, and that weaver weaves through all the passives, and the final incoming pairs, and it then becomes abandoned as a passive. You create a new, you ignore the furthermost passive thread and create a new weaver passive combo from the second and the third threads from the edge. And the weaver weaves through all the passives. The shape is coming to a close, or the top part of the shape is ending, so the final weaver you could have this pair also just swivel around and be a continuous contour pair. That would also work. I just like to outline the edge in a compound shape with a corner. Okay. And there's not enough room for a weaver on this side, so just throw out a pair and bring the contour pair a little bit closer to the shape. And now you have threads available to create a small snowflake shape. Having pairs cross at the top, bringing in a pair, and making a bias weave in the style of the small snowflake. We will encounter this again when we design trails. And then ending the small snowflake with its symmetrical the outline curved with two pairs crossing on the inside. And at the top I missed that one. Exiting, exiting. Take a look at this pin and how it supports the changing of direction of an outgoing pair to become a ring pair. Similarly, how the ring pair is supported by that pin to change direction and enter the shape of the motif. creating a first weaver. The weaver weaves through all the incoming pairs, creating a new weaver passive combo by ignoring the edge pair and then working the next two pairs together. The next weaver weaves through all the incoming pairs, including that one. It gets abandoned as a passive, and the contour pair on the other side. And throwing out this contour pair because it's the end, it's the corner where the two shapes meet. And then I'd like to keep this as a contour pair, so I'll simply throw out a pair, and now we have pairs available to make this part of the shape. Starting the small snowflake with its symmetrical version, bringing in a pair on either side, which cross, turning the contour pair, bringing in the contour pair and completing the shape. Now, if I had drawn this in pencil first, I would have been able to tidy it up. Continue practicing this arrangement of the shape. For interest's sake, let me show you how to work this shape by using a continuous contour pair. It's a little bit awkward, but it works. Incoming, outgoing, 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 outgoing. Remember the importance of that corner pen to support that change of direction. And let's also start the shape by creating the first weaver, ignoring the topmost pen as just simply two passives. Starting the first weaver there, it weaves through all the incoming pairs. Making a new weaver, which we also goes through all the incoming pairs. And that incoming pair can work through all the passives. Now, this contour pair we'd like to continue and it would then hug that bottom snowflake shape as its contour pair. And there's an exiting pair, so the next weaver I want to keep the integrity of the outside contour pair, so I'd make a new weaver from the next two the two passives just inside the contour pair. Leaving us with it's a little bit awkward, but it'll work. One might even close that gap by having this pair exit there and that one one, two, 3, 4. Let's see how this cleans up. A different solution to this problem but perfectly workable too. That is the beauty of this technique. There is there are many solutions to the same problems, and it depends on your preference for what you'd like to. It depends on your preference and what you'd like to do. This also makes this kind of cloth work a little bit infuriating because there are no hard and fast yes or no, right or wrongs. You have to decide what works for you and what looks pleasing to you. I simply find that breaking the contour pairs in compound shapes helps to accentuate the shape in the final cloth work.